If you want your portraits to look professional and have those perfect proportions and likeness, you need to learn how to start those beginning stages. So in this video, I want to walk you through the 3 essential steps in putting a portrait together that will massively improve your drawings. After watching this, I guarantee that you will start to think completely different in how you approach your portraits. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out any time I post a video about mastering proportions and developing your style into realistic and expressive portraits. Okay, so let's dive in. So one of the main reasons why portraits fall short, that I see happen way too often, is you work into the details way too quickly. Instead of actually going through the process that allows you to get to this end stage where you're able to work into the details. Now, because portraits are so difficult, you tend to want to have some kind of indication or approval from the drawing at the beginning that you are moving in the right direction. So it's so easy to fall into that trap of just focusing on one particular area of the drawing. It's usually some kind of facial feature and then just putting all of the details in it immediately because you want that confirmation that that looks right in comparison to your reference. So that's actually only going to set you back in the long run because you're just creating more work for yourself because you're not building a solid foundation to actually build on. The easiest way that's actually going to set you up for more successful drawing is by starting broad and then working your way in. So there's 3 stages in a drawing: the beginning stage, the middle stage, which covers this whole area here, and then you have the final stage. And the easiest way to work through all of these stages is by simplifying the portrait. By reducing the form of the portrait into its most basic and simple shapes, not only does it become a lot more digestible, but it also becomes a lot more easier to understand as well. So this is what you want to vision when you're working through those 3 stages. If you're ready to take your work seriously and you want to know more about working with me in my lifetime access program so you can master those proportions and develop your style that reflects your artistic voice, I'll leave a link in the description to book a call. We can talk about your struggles, what you want to achieve, and whether working with me is a good fit for your goals. Link is in the description. So the beginning stages, you want to build some kind of base structure or framework that you can build on. So by finding your center point, you can then find your widest points. Now in this photo, there's not really a center point, it's more over to the left a little bit, but you want to try and find or identify a specific area in the portrait that is close to your center point that you can use to help find your widest points. This line that comes down here, it hits the edge of his eye, but also that little corner of his mouth. Just by having this center line, I'm able to find other key points within the portrait, and it's giving me easier information to see. All of my important information, all of my features and everything are on this side of my center line, and then all of the maybe not so important information, more information that I'm able to play with, is on this side of that center line. Throughout the entire process of the drawing, we're not looking at one stage where we want it to look exactly like we want it to look. We only want it to look like our subject at the very end. So when we actually build our base structure, we're not looking for it to be perfect straight away. This is just a basic frame so we know where parts of the information of the portrait is going to be placed. And then we can start immediately sectioning his landmarks with that basic frame. This is where we start to venture into the vast land of the middle stages. Now this is where the real fun starts to happen. This is when we start to lay our base value down and begin the game of chess that the drawing entices us to play. I put a bit here, this section now looks a bit different. I had a little bit here, now this section looks a little bit different. This is because everything is in relation to everything. As soon as you add one action into one area, it has an effect on the surrounding areas to the rest of the portrait. Placement isn't the only aspect that gives you your proportions. Think of proportions more of a relationship between your placement and your values. Values play the biggest role in any drawing, and it basically dictates how the drawing looks. It is the driving force to any portrait. If you have poor values, your drawing will probably fall short. My drawing doesn't actually look like my subject until the very end. This is because I'm leaving all details and that refined structure until the very later stages. Throughout the entire process, there's a balance of values and definition. If you notice in this section here, we've got some of those base values in, and just a little bit of definition of where the prominent areas are as well. And then as we move down to this section here, we've got more value, but we've lost some of that definition in his face. And then it's not until the later stages that I then start to reintroduce that definition and these edges, and then repeat the process again in building up those values and then adding in that definition and those edges again. We don't want our very first initial frame to be absolutely perfect, because it's going to transform and it's going to change throughout the entire process. As long as we can get to a point where we can understand where we can place our features and place our important information with that wiggle room, that's all we're looking for. Remember, these are still our shapes. So we want our definition and our value shapes to match this structure here. So this is the reason why your portraits may fall short, because you enter this ugly stage of the process of the drawing, and because it doesn't look like your subject straight away, it's so easy to panic and just go, okay, it's not looking right, so now I need to just focus on this eye area here and try to get it as realistic as possible. So you have that indication from the drawing that you're actually doing something right. You're almost potentially leading yourself into creating more work for you, because if you start refining one section of the portrait too early, this is now locked in and you can't actually change it or refine it anymore. And because everything else has that wiggle room where you're able to push it and move it slowly in the process so you can get it to where it needs to be, the rest of the portrait now can't work together. So it's a lot more beneficial building the drawing up together as a whole, because you're able to judge this area to this area and to every other aspect and connection point within the portrait. It's all working together in unison. So you're able to transition the drawing through the stages as a whole, and you're able to then eventually get it to a point where the very last things that you need to do are those final edges and bits of definition and your darker values as well, just to give it that stamp on your drawing. The issue is, going through this ugly stage can almost be a bit disheartening, because you're going from something that doesn't look great at all to it now looks really messy, and then somehow transition it into what it's meant to look like. So when you find yourself in the ugly stage and it doesn't look like what it's meant to, bring your attention back to the simplified form of the portrait. This is going to be your saving grace, because this has all of those prominent value lines that build the structure of the portrait. So then it's just about reintroducing those prominent areas that will eventually lead you into a more accurate likeness of your subject. Now, each drawing will have its own kind of ugly stage. How long that ugly stage lasts for, that's really dependent on how the process goes and the portrait itself as well. I've had some that have lasted almost 90% of the drawing, and it's only been the last 10% where it's finally come together. And there's other drawings where it's only the first 10% where it's that ugly stage. The important thing to remember is it's a process. You're creating a solid foundation that you can build on. And then this is where the fun happens. You then start to enter the final stages. This is where you get to put your own unique stamp on the drawing, make it unique to you. Because you've got that solid foundation to build on, it's given you that freedom to now explore with the drawing. How much texture or movement that you want to put into the drawing, but you only really have that freedom confidently if you focus on the beginning stages through those middle stages in building that foundation. Appreciate it. See you in the next one.